Welcome back to our Land Bulletin series. I'm Haley Mirr, and I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships and Development here at Mirr Ranch Group. For those of you who are first joining, every other week we discuss the ranch and sporting property market, buying and selling advice, the latest best stewardship practices, as well as topics currently impacting landowners. Mirr Ranch Group is a full-service ranch real estate brokerage and consulting company focusing on legacy ranches and sporting and conservation properties around the West. Today, we're going to be talking about the outlook of the 2024 ranch real estate market. We'll review the market conditions of 2023 and also the buying and selling advice for clients for this upcoming year. What should you be looking out for? What you should be considering when you're talking to brokers or even buying in 2024? Helping me out today with this conversation is the Senior Vice President of Mirr Ranch Group and finance expert, Jeff Hubbard. Welcome, Jeff.
Hey, Haley. How you doing?
Good. You look cozy over there. I like the fireplace. It's a nice backdrop.
Yeah, it's nice. It's going to be 60 something degrees here today, but the fire, makes it look like winter. So
fake it, It looks like you were just out hunting with some of your family recently.
I was in the Red Hills region of South Georgia, North Florida. I was actually in Florida with my brothers and cousins and uncle. We had a nice long weekend at a wild quail plantation down there, and it was fantastic. We had good weather and lots of birds and good family time. It was really a nice weekend.
And I saw Mr. Rob in your photo, Mr. Key.
Yeah, Rob's the only non-Hubbard in there. We had 5 Hubbards and a Key. So Rob's like blood. So
yeah,
it's great to have
he's
him
the
along.
Best. It was good to see his face. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. I would love just your input as a ranch broker in what you saw in 2023 and looking forward in 2024. So I guess we'll kind of go over the market highlights. And for those who are listening, they might not have a big background in the ranch real estate market, but they might have more of an idea of what's going on with residential, just with what they see and what they interact with. What was kind of the biggest difference when it came to the ranch market versus the residential? Kind of what are the differentiating factors that maybe didn't impact us as much?
Well, I think first and foremost, we're not subject to the fluctuations in interest rates to the extent that the residential market is. 5 to 7% mortgage rates in the housing sector are significant, and I think have had a real heavy impact on that space. I've been doing this now for 20 years, brokering, buying and selling ranches, and I can't remember. I think I've sold over $1 billion in ranches in my career, and I don't know that I've ever seen anyone put paper on a place during the acquisition stage. Maybe once or twice on smaller deals. Mm-hmm. And there have been occasions where people would do it post closing, but in general, our market doesn't, the effect of interest rates on our market is not near what it is on the residential market. And that's intuitive. Most of our deals are cash. So, but yeah. Nevertheless, I think that psychologically it has an impact on buyers. Mm-hmm. And I think that was reflected in what I would consider a soft 2023.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think, it doesn't impact necessarily their purchase. It impacts like other facets of their life and their business. So in that way, some of that uncertainty probably just affected some of the buyers from wanting to enter it. And what did you see just in terms of the types of ranches that were selling in 2023?
And I think that the reality of 23 is largely attributable to all of the absorption that occurred during the COVID days. And I think there's a sort of not only did we have a lot of absorption, but, everyone who had sort of soft interest in ranches and took the plunge during the COVID years for for reasons that are understandable. They've now got their ranch, so we lost a lot of demand, and we have this
Mhm.
sort of hangover effect. So we have this odd situation right now where we have a lot of the buyers have done their thing, and yet we don't have a ton of inventory because there was so much absorption.
Mhm.
So I think those factors played into the soft market in 23, and I we'll see what happens in 24, but again, this is sort of subjective. Our market is not, there aren't heavy data points to analyze. And again, because we're not subject to the effect of interest rates, it's a bit of a shot in the dark. All you can do is make predictions based on your experience and your feel. But, my hunch is that in 24, we will see some product come along.
Mhm.
And I do think that there are people who still see this as an attractive space for parking money, land banking, if you will. So I look for better times, I hope, in
Yeah.
24. We'll see. I mean, we're in the middle of the winter, so nothing's really happening much right now. But I think in the spring we'll see some more product come along, and I
Mhm.
think the buyer. I mean, even just in the last month, the buyer activity has increased. So I'm optimistic for a
Yeah.
little velocity in the market this year.
And when we looked at kind of our data, we have a really extensive kind of end of year report that we're happy to share if those of you listening want to see it. But based on kind of like the data that we as a company have gathered, there was a higher sales average. So the from last year to this year, it seemed like big legacy properties and those type of buyers were still out there. But some of the guys that were, our bread and butter is that 3 to 5 mil, those guys just weren't there because the inventory wasn't there. So it was interesting to see too that the average price sale was higher this 2023 than years past too.
Yes, I mean, I think that the sector of our space on the super high end was strong, and I think
Mhm.
that is a testament to the reality that the people who can purchase, who have the horsepower to buy $50+ million properties, just aren't, they are not subject to these sort of macroeconomic factors that have existed in our economy between, uh, you know, anxiety over inflation, higher interest
Mhm.
rates in general. These guys, even if it's some of these transactions, $100 million acquisition or more, it's aggressive to say it's a rounding error for them, but it's not. The calculus for them is not analogous to our bread and butter, as you say, the person who's buying a $3 to even $20 million property, which is, that comprises 95% of our business. So,
Oh yeah, big time. I mean, the prime example of those cross mountain pieces that we've had for a while now, they all pretty much sold this year. One of which was to the state, so that was kind of a different deal. Bar Cross up in Wyoming, we represented the buyer for that, but those kind of legacy deals. But we really didn't see a lot of the smaller deals trading. But maybe it's because there wasn't a lot of inventory for that this year. So it'll be
yeah,
interesting to see
that's
what
what's
happens.
unusual. Yeah, about this cycle that we're in. Normally, when you see a soft market, you see a lot of product and a concurrent price adjustment
Mhm.
in the market, and we haven't seen that. I suspect that we're gonna see some of that in 24. I mean, the reality is a lot of the folks who took the plunge during the COVID years have discovered that uh, the reality of owning a ranch is not what they expected. They're and I don't want to begrudge my industry here, but owning, it's not. Owning a ranch is something that's emotional. It costs money. It takes up brain power, bandwidth. time. And it can be sort of a headache to the extent that you're not really into it and you're not really enjoying it. I mean, there are travel considerations, geographic considerations. Many of these owners live far away, and they find that they can't, they end up not using it to the extent that they hoped. And I think that that's just a reality of owning significant ranch properties, or even insignificant ranch properties. And I think that plays into my hunch that we'll see more products come along here in 24.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I know of one of your clients who will be unloading something this year, and Ken has a client who I think we have 3 coming up this year already, which were past clients that are
Yeah,
now kind of, they've realized maybe this wasn't the investment, but if anything, it protected my money while the market was kind of fluctuating and doing all these things. And I probably
sure.
made more money letting it sit in this ranch than I would have otherwise. So I think, it was a diversification for a lot of people, but I do recognize, and I agree with you, that we'll start to see a lot of that turnover in 2024, just based on what we're seeing internally.
Yeah, and you're correct. I agree with you that in spite of my sort of woe is me seeming attitude here, it still is a safe space, just like any investment. I mean, there's risk, but I think the risk is low, and
Yeah.
it is land,
Mhm.
and you're not going to get killed in these deals, but it's so much of the process, the decision making process is tied to the utility value that the owner derives out of the asset, because that's all there is. I mean, with a few exceptions, there's no material income associated with these things, and
Mhm.
so that being said, again, it's a safe space, but you better enjoy it, and you better be able to derive some utility out of the ownership. Otherwise,
Mhm.
it becomes a headache.
Yeah. Know what you're buying. And I think, that's too with 2020, 2021, 2022. There was kind of this resurgence of people who wanted to get to rural areas. Some of that is starting to weigh a little bit. And I think the savvy buyers who know like what they're buying, and they're buying for a reason, and they understand what they're going to be getting into. I think those people still exist. And I think there will be less competition for those types of buyers because, you know, that's that's a good
I
thing
agree.
because a lot of buyers, they'll be able to take their time, work with brokers, do the research, all that,
Yeah,
which is
I
good.
agree 100%. I mean, you're right. I mean, those who have been doing this for a while, been trading in and out of places, have owned places that are not close to home and cost money. They're accustomed to all these matters, and they're buyers. I mean,
Mhm,
they're watching. Um,
mhm,
so for those of you who are thinking of selling, there will be buyers. We may have a little bit of an adjustment in pricing this year, but I
mhm.
don't think it's significant enough that anyone's going to be crying in their beer
Yeah.
when they decide to upload these things. So
Yeah. And what do you expect? I know this is an election year, and that's always impacted, markets in any kind. You foresee that kind of having an effect on 2024 for buyers or sellers?
I do. I mean, I think the country is extraordinarily polarized right now, and you have two options that are on opposite ends of the spectrum, and you have I think that creates just anxiety in general um, for Americans and for humanity. There's a lot of uncertainty, and that uh, that has an effect on all investments, and particularly on our space. And But these things tend to work themselves out,
Mhm.
and I think we'll have a better feel for things when the season really ramps up here in 3 or 4 months. More confidence in what we're going to have, what we're going to see, what the future is going to look like. for our country.
Mhm.
And I think we'll in turn have some more action, I hope.
Yeah. No, I'm already sensing it. This time last year, the prospects that we were seeing, the proposals we were seeing was much lower than it is now. So to your point, I think inventory is just, not going to explode, but it's definitely going to be better than it was. But I also do, working with people like you and Pat, valuation is very important if you're a seller and you want these things to trade. So we talk about the buyers being there, the inventory is going to be there, the savvy investors are there. But if, we saw a couple of ranches and some of which we're, going to potentially try to prospect that have been on the market for years and they haven't traded. And, this is, I think a lot of people tried to take advantage of those prices that were happening. And that's just not going to be the case anymore. I think there's a new reality now for ranch sellers that, 2023 was a good example of it, but I think it'll just continue in 2024.
Yeah. And I mean, I sort of wax on about how inefficient our market is and how it's difficult to be smart about, where the strike prices are going to be on these deals, but especially on the smaller deals, say up to 20 million. I mean, we have with technology and with the data that we collect, we can be pretty smart about where these things will trade. And early in my career, I thought, my attitude was sort of, this is the Wild West. This is throw a price out there. They tend not to be emotional transactions. If you're a seller, you hope it's an emotional transaction for the buyer. But throw a price and see where the offers are. Buyers in our space are not preoccupied with offending folks to the extent that they make offers. And it's in that regard, it's sort of a pure market. You make an offer, you make a counter, and you figure it out. You make the market. And you'll have to refresh me on our average strike price compared to our sales price, Haley, but obviously that delta expands as you get into higher end, 20 million plus products. But I would encourage, I guess what I'm getting at is I would encourage sellers to really pay attention to what we say when it comes to what your place is worth, because, and I got distracted, but I used to feel like, well, you throw a price out there and if it's too high, the market will tell you and you'll figure it out and you'll sell it. But there is something to, people talk about in the residential market all the time, a place getting stale because it lingers out there on the market. And I used to think, well, that's not really so with our stuff because people are not offended by making offers. But there, as I've aged and gotten a few whiskers here, I think there may be, there is something to that actually. So I think it's important. And if you really screw up and you price it too low, the market's gonna ferret that out. I mean, you're gonna get more than one offer,
Right.
and maybe above ask. So that's another benefit of having sort of this, I call it a pure market, but I do think there's some danger in overpricing these deals and hoping that your buyer falls in love with it like he would a painting or, something that is an emotional response. I mean, that's what you hope for again as a seller, but the more efficient this market gets with all of the data we have and the smarter the buyer pool gets, those factors are diminished.
Yeah, I would agree. And to your point, sure, there's those types of legacy properties that are like paintings, and there will be an emotional response just because it's one in a million, and no matter how it's priced, it's going to sell. But those aren't every ranch. You might feel like your ranch is that, but we'll keep you honest and we'll show you what this will actually sell for. And, like the old age says, a ranch is only as valuable as the buyer that wants to buy it, So if the buyer doesn't exist and it's priced at this price point, it's just not, no matter how much your family has loved it over the last 10 years, it's not going to sell the way
Exactly.
you want
And again, I mean, I think there is real danger to this staleness factor. I mean, thankfully, I don't have a ton of examples, but I have
Yeah.
I have real world examples of where people have so overpriced these things and they've lingered and they've eventually traded for numbers that would be below what they would have otherwise traded for if there wasn't this staleness factor. So
Yeah. So I guess looking into 2024, based on, the type of year we're going to have last year, what we're seeing in trends, what is your kind of biggest advice for sellers? And then we'll go to buyers.
yeah, I mean, that's a nice segue into what I was just saying. I listen to your broker, whether it's us or someone else. Strive for them to provide hard data. It's a challenge. It's sort of an art and not a science in our world because each of these things is so unique, and all of the valuation metrics that go hand in hand with the value of a ranch. Whether it's hunting value, fishing value, proximity to civilization, proximity to ski resorts, airports, whether there's any production income, tons of sort of intangible metrics, views. I mean, it just goes, you can go on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
But a smart broker will help you process and compress all of these sort of metrics and come up with comparable sales that are a proxy for your asset. Or you're never going to find anything that's perfect, but there is a way to be smart about it. And the truth is, we this is what we do. This is not. I mean, this is our day job, and a lot of our recommendations, we try and make it as analytical and scientific as possible, but a lot of it is intuition and feel. And a seller may say, well, whatever, but and generally we're dealing with very successful, high functioning individuals who have been involved in multiple complex business and life transactions, and they tend to be strong folks, but don't diminish the value of your broker in that process as a seller. And ask a lot of questions. Challenge your broker. If they're good, they'll not be offended. Not only that, they'll be flattered to be challenged. So,
Love that. Yeah, I think it's just crucial. And we helped. It was a small deal that just closed, but it was a gentleman who's had a ranch in his family for 4 generations, and he doesn't live in the state and just didn't want it anymore. And he's like 85 years old, and he was just so grateful that there was someone to walk him through it, because when it's an investment like that or something that's been handed down and you don't know what you're doing, it's really helpful to have a teammate by your side to work in your best interest from valuation to close. And I think it would be a very lonely transaction otherwise if you didn't have like the right team behind you. And then in terms of buyers, in 2023, this was more of a residential thing again, but there was a big stink about, buyer representation brokers in the residential space. And I think it's a very, again, different market. There's a lot of different kind of data out there for savvy buyers in the residential space. But I think just like sellers, buyers, need to heed some broker opinion too. And I'd love to hear kind of your opinion for buyers who are, maybe unrepresented, think that they know what they're doing, think they know what they're looking for. What would you recommend to them if they're trying to look for a ranch in 2024?
yeah, I mean, I think because of the lumpy and choppy nature of our industry and deal flow, I think to the extent someone goes into the process of acquiring a ranch, without an advisor, and I mean a broker, not just an attorney or a friend or buddy that owns other ranches. I mean, I think it's just lunacy to not do it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the wisdom that we have gathered over the years of being involved in multiple transactions that we can impart upon the process is really so exceeds the value of what we end up, the impact on the price. I mean, these our fees are embedded in the price anyway, but generally, these are complex, difficult deals, and I think the most value add that for brokers is the process of finding the right place. Once you've found it and you're confident and you're happy with your price, then the attorneys add a ton of value. We're still very involved, but it's figuring out what works for you, and the anecdotes and the things that go hand in hand with the reality that we this is our world. We've seen this. We've done this. We've seen so much of this, and I think it is critical. I cannot overemphasize how important it is for a buyer to engage a broker, somebody who knows what they're doing in the process.
Yeah. And it's too, these transactions, even during the due diligence, can get very tricky. And once again, to have someone who is doing everything with your best interest in mind, I think is crucial. So from beginning to end, I think working with people like you, like Jeff, or like Pat, like anyone at Mirr Ranch Group, I think it's important to have someone on your team, because these are more than houses. These are investments, large scale. You're parking a lot of cash in these different places, so you should have the best people by your side. So, well, I really appreciate you taking the time today, Jeff, to talk about 2023 and 2024. And I know you're going to have a better year this year. I know some of the transactions you're working on, and they're cool. So I'm excited for you.
Yeah, no, it always works itself out. And if nothing else, we're optimistic, and I love what I do and love helping people on whether it's the sell side or the buy side. It's believe it or not, it's fun for me. Mm-hmm. This is my life. This is I'm already old, but if I'm lucky enough to get really old and I think back on life and my career as it relates to life, the idea of being able to make a lot of friends and help a lot of people is very satisfying to me. So
yeah, no, it's been awesome. I mean, I've known you since I was like 15 or something like that.
I know. Look at all the whiskers. I don't have much in the way of gray hair right now. All my friends claim that I put shoe polish in my hair. I don't.
No, that's real.
That's belied. Yeah, I'm 51 years old, and my brown hair is belied by the reality that I'm about to get my second hip replacement in 3 weeks. So if I had to trade gray hair or no hair for hip replacement, I think I'd take the no hair. But
that's all right. We'll take the good hair. No, but exactly. It's been awesome, and you're such a leader at this company, and to see kind of the transactions you've worked on, and it's nice to hear kind of your insight and kind of where things are headed. So thank you so much for joining today, Jeff.
Thank you so much, Haley. Enjoyed it. See you, everybody.
Thank you. Talk soon. And thank you to those who are listening for joining us on the Land Bulletin today. Once again, I'd like to thank our Senior Vice President of Mirr Ranch Group, Jeff Hubbard, for coming on the show and for giving his insight into what to expect. 2023 was different for everyone at Mirr Ranch Group. We actually had a better year, but a lot of that, again, was because of the average sale price and some of those kind of bigger transactions. So, if you're a seller, like Jeff said, and you're looking to enter the space, this is a really good time, because inventory is low in it, but the buyers are there. So we're here to answer any questions you have. And if you want to learn more about the ranch real estate market or our marketing process, or for a free valuation of your property, please be sure to subscribe to our newsletter on our website at mirranchgroup.com, or give us a call at 303-623-4545. Thanks so much. See you next time.